Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is good today. Welcome to another episode of Diary of a Cocaine Addict. Now, this show has been named because I am in recovery from cocaine addiction myself. And this show aims to share the parts of my journey that have been pivotal in keeping me in recovery. You know, I've shared a lot of the backstory of what happened that led me into addiction, and also the things that are keeping me straight. Now, I am a trained recovery coach now, and I work with others to really help them get to the bottom of what's going on for them. That includes, you know, working out a plan of how to stop, when to stop, and staying stopped. And it also includes, on the other side of that, rebuilding their life in recovery. Like for me personally, when I went into recovery, I realized what a big thing my addiction was. Like, it just took over my entire being. It was the first thing I thought about when I woke up in the morning. It was the last thing I thought about when I got in bed at night, whenever that might be. And you know, it just dominated my thoughts, it dominated my life, it dominated my actions, my behaviors, the whole shebang. And when that was taken away and I was suddenly clean and abstinent, I was just like, now what do I do? You know, and it was this whole new landscape that was a little bit frightening and a little bit daunting, a little bit overwhelming, to suddenly realize at 39 years old, I don't even know what I like, you know? And so this journey unfolded for me in a way that has led me back to the truth of who I am. And that's really where my passion lies, is helping people to find meaning and purpose and clarity and direction in their own lives. You know, like, inspiration is my thing. It just comes out of me in abundance, and I don't know how. Sometimes it's a bit overwhelming, I'm not gonna lie. But people have constantly told me for my whole life that I've inspired them to do something, be something, not do something, whatever it is. And so for me, this is about channeling this gift for the greater good, and part of that is this show, right? I realize that actually the power of our stories, the power of our voices, those of us that are willing to use them in this way, makes an incredible difference in the world. Now, we may never know that. I was just having a conversation a moment ago with Steve, who hosts this podcast, and I said, you know, I don't really know if this is making an impact. And he assured me, yes, it is. You know, people are making contact with the show and with his team. And so it can be, you know, such that we don't necessarily outwardly see the signs of, I don't want to say success because that's the wrong word, of the impact that we're creating. You know, like, you can maybe one day you just write a post on Facebook, you share something really vulnerable, and a person reads it, they don't respond, they don't like it, they don't love it, they don't laugh at it, they don't comment, and they don't get in touch with you, right? And you never ever know that you've made a massive impact on this person's life. That person has read it and suddenly thought to themselves, oh my goodness, you know, it's made them connect the dots in a different way for themselves. And it has given them the hope and the inspiration that they needed in that moment, that maybe transforms how the day has unfolded for them. So I really want to encourage you today to recognize that your voice is important, and your voice is being heard by the right people in the right way at the right time for them. Just because you don't know that doesn't mean that it's not happening, right? So never give up, right? Never give up, and just always come from a place of, like, you know, what's working for me? How can I use that to help others, right? That's my best advice for you today. Now, I've just been filling in the gap while I've been waiting for my very special guest today, who is joining us from the States. It is 6:08 a.m. So thank you very much, very special guest, for getting up to join us. I very much appreciate it. A few technical issues thrown in pre-breakfast, which is always awesome, isn't it? So without further ado, let my very special guest introduce himself. Welcome to the show.
What's up? Can you hear me okay?
Hi.
Can you hear
How are
me?
you?
I'm doing fantastic. Oh, can you hear me okay though?
I can hear you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I had a little bit of a snafu getting in the link, so it's early and I'm glad to be on with you. How's everything over
It's great to
there?
have you here. It's great to have you here. I love that word snafu. We don't really use it so much over here in the UK, but I love it every time I hear it. It's great. So Dane, welcome, Dane Waters, to the show. Now, Dane is actually the partner of a lady that I've already interviewed previously on this show, the fabulous Sabrina Victoria, and these two are like a very dynamic couple, actually making waves in the world of recovery. So do you want to tell us a bit about what it is that you do, Dane?
would love to. So yes, our Queen Sabrina Victoria, who is the owner and founder of Human Better 365. One of the divisions is Sober Society. So we actually dispatch to the homes in the States to work a program. So people go to detox, people like me who've maybe drank or partook in whatever their poison is of choice. But once they get detoxed, we come into the home and work our program with them in the privacy of their home. So people that maybe have a license to protect or a professional life that they just can't chance having somebody, reveal in the workplace or in the community, we come and work with them in their homes, in their communities. And it's worked very well thus far because we can tailor it for each individual, and we do things a little different. So it's been a huge success. Really, timing has been great with the COVID climate and ecosystem we work through. So that was really helpful because we kind of implemented it right at the start of COVID with that, being able to respond in the home. So we also support a large community here in South Florida and throughout the States through a Facebook group called Sober Society 365, where we have a Wednesday meeting every week, a peer-led support group where we support people who are struggling or maybe not struggling, maybe just trying to look for exciting and new ways to keep excited about sobriety in their life. So
That's
pretty
awesome.
straightforward. Yeah.
Very, very important work that you are doing over there. That's amazing. So tell us, what is your first point of call? Like, somebody makes contact with your organization and says, I'm drinking too much. What is the conversation that unfolds from there for you?
We do a really good job understanding kind of what the struggle is, and then also identifying with the family what the struggle is and what it looks like. So the start is to make sure that we're a good fit for the family and for the individual, because so much of the work, it's one-on-one or Sabrina and I 2-on-1 for quite a long time. So it's very important that we just have that synergy and that connection, kind of like you did with Sabrina, kind of like I do with you. So that's number one. And it's maybe 1 out of 10 that's even a fit with us. And then if they're not a fit, we help direct them to other resources.
I just think, yesterday I was having a conversation with somebody actually who's really struggling and said to me, this is going to kill me. I know it is. And I was like, look, maybe you need medical intervention. And this person is terrified to contact the doctor because, that could turn into a social services situation. She's a single mother. It really struck me how much people stay stuck because we're not able to seek the help that we need because of these perceived consequences. And, I can't guarantee her that her doctor's not going to call Child Protection Services, obviously. And so it becomes, I take that on myself. I'm like, oh my God, what can I do to help this person? And so I really think that the service that you guys provide there, being able to go into a person's house and help with that intervention is priceless. It's absolutely priceless. So I just want to credit you with that. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you want to share with us a bit of your own journey, Dane, so the listeners can get an idea of kind of where you've come from and what, I don't want to say qualifies. We're not talking about qualifications as in pieces of paper, but the peer-to-peer thing. Share with us.
Yeah, when I was thinking about getting sober, but I wasn't ready, and you can probably identify what that feels like. You should do something, but you're like, later, I'll do it later. I know I can later, and then later becomes maybe weeks, months, years. At least it did for me. And it took my story. Some people got involved. My sister and family. But if you're that person that's like, I know I need to do it, I don't know how. Sometimes it's just easy to talk to the right person who's not going to maybe ask you 1,000 questions, but just ask you a couple key questions. And, when my life became unmanageable and the alcohol, I realized I couldn't stop because my body needed it. Right. And that's really scary to wake up and feel horrible and say, I'm not going to drink today. And then the afternoon comes and then somehow I would justify it that same day over and over and over. And it's completely a prison that I was stuck in. And if you're that person, know that there's an easier, softer way than what you're maybe experiencing now. And sometimes for me, you know, a lot of people attribute a lot of things to their sobriety. And for me, I had a really great guy that helped me. You know, I did have a spiritual advisor. I had a mentor. I had a sponsor. I had a family and friends that I used. But just one particular man who took the time to sit with me, didn't even have like, he was just a guy trying to help. But he did all the right things, said all the right things, identified with them. And I really attribute so much of what I got early on with the relationship that I had with that guy.
That's
amazing. People talk about higher powers, and I think any way you can get there is great. But for me, I needed that human factor, you know, that person that could help me, guide me, listen to me. So much of what maybe you see in movies, you think that you have to go to this big room and get on the stage with the microphone and share your problems. But that wasn't my experience at all.
Yeah. Well, that's encouraging. So
Yeah.
You'd got into yourself into a place where your drinking became unmanageable. And then?
Yeah. And then I realized that, well, you know, I was using it like medically. I was using it to sleep. I was using it to be with family that I was uncomfortable around, all these situations. But then I got a chance, and some family said, hey, let's get you some help, get you evaluated. And next thing I know, I'm in detox and rehab.
Wow.
And I somehow did it. You know, my story's still unfolding, but I went to a rehab and really valued the lessons and the techniques and the things that I learned and grasped onto it almost 15 years ago in December. But the idea of what happened was unbelievable. You know, I remember being super raw and vulnerable and upset early on, to the point where I like hated family and wasn't really finding myself spending time around friends and so forth. And then slowly but surely, I started to like myself a little bit better. I started to realize like I'm not abnormal, you know, that I am good enough to have relationships, things like that. And I really found a Dane that I liked, but it took a lot to get there. You know, I didn't have any significance after I got sober. You know, I was the funny guy who drank a lot, and, you know, I made good money, and I was somewhat responsible when I was drinking 12 beers a day or more. So like, it really was weird when I got sober. I didn't know what to do. Everything was like uncomfortable. Going to football games was uncomfortable. So I really had to readjust my life and find a new significance, find a new way of, being passionate about things and so forth. So I got super involved in boxing. Actually, I've never been in a fight in my life, but I became an amateur boxer and started competing, and that changed my life because I was focusing on what I wanted instead of running away from what I didn't want. And I knew that if I worked hard, I could do this. And, you know, the growth and the contribution I was giving in and around the rooms and things like that, I started to feel value, you know, eventually, and learned a bunch of skills and stuff. But that was the big thing. What happened was I took some suggestions. They started to work. So I started to get addicted to these suggestions, and they started to work more. I would speak up. I tried to be transparent of where I was at. And it took a really long time, Sarah, to be able to feel comfortable being transparent. So I think a really important part for me was to find people I could feel comfortable around. It wasn't my family, wasn't my community members, wherever you can find that. And then having things to look forward to, you know, I don't know if you remember, but man, when I first got sober, I didn't have a lot to look forward to. So I had to create those things. And, you know, making the phone calls every day to the important people that are going to help me maybe see things differently, and, you know, just creating a new vision and like a new significance. You know, I was so scared in the beginning, but man, looking back, it had to be that way. Right. So I'm thankful.
Absolutely. I love how you've articulated that, Dane. That was very powerful. Actually, before you came on, I was just saying, you know, when addiction is taken away, whatever our poison of choice is, it's just suddenly like, oh, like you realize how much of your life it was actually taking up. And then you've got all of this time and space, and you're like, well, what do I do with this now? Like, it's great that I'm clean, but what am I supposed to do here? Like, who even am I?
Now what?
So, yeah, you've articulated that very well. Thank you for sharing that with us. So, here's something that I have just started to ask people. And I plan to ask all my guests this actually. And the question is this, right? What do you do when you're in that place where you know you need to stop? You really need to stop for whatever reasons, maybe a whole bunch of reasons, but you don't want to. You don't want to. How do you get to the place where you do want to?
Great question. So thinking back, there was lots of times where I knew I needed to because it was interrupting my sleep, my relationships, my work. And I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? Like all the cliches we happen to hear.
Uh-huh.
But I tried when I wasn't really ready or what have you, but I became so miserable. And I would encourage people to think that you don't have to be super, super miserable. You can take action now. And it's so glorious when you do, because the relationships that came after I got sober were way better, bigger, more valuable to me today than any of the relationships I had prior to being out there drinking and be, the facade of being good when you're not. But call somebody, sit with somebody, understand that it doesn't even have to be all or nothing. You can privately speak with your doctor and say, hey, having a hard time, and they can help sometimes with, it just depends who you are, but with medicine, and if you're drinking a lot, like I was, the idea of sitting there and like white knuckling it and sweating on your couch and getting sick doesn't have to be part of your story. You can go get help like I did in a detox. And that's not a scary thing, I mean, it was in the beginning, but they medicate you and monitor you where it's something you can go through. And it was foggy to me because there was medicine being introduced, and then slowly I was weaned off. Sure. It was like almost a week. But know that there's real people with real solutions that want to help you. And largely they do it privately. So, my employer was behind me. My family was behind me. Maybe a lot of people don't have that support, but it doesn't need to be done alone. I mean, you can call us in the States, and we can, and there's not just one way to do it. And I think that's the thing. I hear in some circles that this is the only way and this is the best way, but everybody's got their own journey,
Yeah, agreed. But in order to get to that point of making that call, you first got to want to, right? So how do you get 100%. To that point where you want, how do you move from that place where you know this is destroying your life, and every day you're dicing with death, your son might get taken off you, your husband might leave you, or your wife in your case, or whatever. What is it that helps you to flip the switch? Like, I'm trying to kind of build a library of different ways that people can approach this, because there's no simple answer to this, is what I found for myself. As people ask me all the time, and I'm like, I just wanted to. I just finally got to the point where the pain outweighed any of the lies that I was telling myself about it. And that was it for me. And I don't know if you can remember what it was for you that finally moved you from that place of like, my life is in shit here, but I'm still going to carry on drinking, to the place where you're like, I'm making the call. I'm telling my mom, whatever action you took.
It was timing for me. It was, I woke up one morning feeling horrible and hungover. And typically, if the conversation would have gone the way it did, which was, hey, Dane, I think you're drinking too much. Would you agree to get evaluated? And I didn't want to upset my wife at the time. And that was part of it. But I was also completely miserable. And typically I would have said, hey, listen, I'm paying the bills. I'm being responsible. I'm not hurting anyone. So I thought, but that morning I agreed. I'm like, you know what? Okay, I'll get evaluated.
Wow.
And and if there's just a little piece of you that wants it, maybe that's all you need in the beginning.
Yeah.
But I was so miserable. I wouldn't necessarily admit it at the time, but boy, it was just such a horrible cycle. And just the cravings, the difficult emotions, the relationship issues, the loneliness, the money problems that were part of it, the boredom that I had because I couldn't be who I wanted to be. All of that added up to a place of just me being miserable.
Sure. Yeah.
while pretending not to be. I was this actor, you know?
Yeah.
But
But I
find
think
that little piece and just hold on to it and say, you know what, something's pulling me, and I had to quit justifying it in my head, you know?
Yeah, this is it, isn't it? And I think sometimes we don't even realize that we're miserable. Do you know what I mean? Like, to all intents and purposes, I thought I was a party girl. I thought I was having a great time. You know, I was the life and soul of the party. I was very popular and people loved to have me around. And that was kind of my identity. And so, therefore, I believed that I was choosing that. And I chose to believe that I was having a good time because actually, in hindsight, it was far easier to believe that wrecking my life was fun than to face the reality that actually I couldn't bear to sit with myself. I couldn't work out how to function as a normal human being without this chemical blanket over me. Like, it's a lot, isn't it?
It is. And I think even writing a list of like pros and cons is a really great way to see it and just be honest about it. Because so much of my life revolved around, like, when I would wake up on a Saturday morning, I was already looking forward to what I was going to be doing that evening because it involved alcohol. Like, everything I looked forward to involved alcohol. So that was my significance. That's how I achieved, so I thought, happiness. And it just wasn't. People need different things to be happy. And I needed to feel significant. I needed love and connection. You know, I needed some certainty in my life, and I wasn't getting that when I drank, because who knew what happened when I drank enough. And I wasn't growing when I was drinking. I was just like maintaining. I wasn't thriving. I was just barely surviving. And I had like very little contribution in my community or my friends or my family because I was so self-absorbed with how I was going to get it, where I was going to get it, not being obvious about it, and just a constant brain damage trying to figure out how to do this. And just, I hate it. And this is why I love working with new people, because it brings those feelings back up every time, living, vicariously through their new experience. But it's scary. And I think it had to be for me to take it serious. But, I think that just take the step and see where it takes you. The waiting, the tomorrow-itis, I'll do it tomorrow, just became a continual cycle for me. And I believe that it takes what it takes. But I think that you don't need to keep living this way. It's just, it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, agreed. And it's that first step, isn't it? It's most crucial. And it begins with admitting it to yourself. That's sometimes even harder than having a conversation with a third party, is saying to yourself, okay, actually, maybe I do need to rein it in a bit, because then it's almost like you're saying to yourself, oh shoot, there is a problem. Like, maybe all these people are right all along. And it's like, oh no, where do I go from here? But there's a whole world of support out there. Like, the recovery community is absolutely phenomenal. So
yes,
brings me on to my next question for you, Mr. Dane, which is, why is community so important in recovery?
All I know is it's important for me. It's huge for me. It's up there with like the top 3 things that need to happen for me. So Sarah, you've probably heard the opposite of addiction is maybe connection, right?
Connection, yeah.
Or community. And for me, it's absolutely true. Yep. I find that, and not just a community, but the right community. So when I came to South Florida, I had gotten sober in Atlanta. And when I came to South Florida, unbeknownst to me, is like this alcohol, drug rehab treatment center mecca of the world. I used to think it was in California. I had no idea South Florida was like the place and the hub for some reason. Wow. I don't know if it's all the beaches or what, but it's absolutely huge down here. So it really, for me, I have to be surrounded by positive people, because I can default back to my old days, my old thinking. And now it's much easier because I've been doing it for so long. But my community offers me a way to talk about my difficult emotions, my cravings, my relationship problems, money problems, loneliness, boredom, all those things. And it's something where I can bring my issue. They don't judge me, they listen to me, and then they offer their experience, strength, and hope. However, not to be negative, but just to be transparent, there were some rooms that I would go into where people weren't loving. Yeah. They weren't living in abundance and love. They were living in lack and fear. And it just wasn't healthy. So right away I identified, this isn't what I'm used to. This isn't what I like. So I left that community and I made my own community. And we do things differently. We don't judge. We don't care what your affliction or addiction is. And that's that Facebook group, Sober Society 365, every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We hop on a call and we offer support with a group of people that aren't trying to, we're not trying to put our know-it-all hats on. We're just trying to come from a place of love and, our past. But the community for me is something that I can look forward to. It creates significance in my life because I feel like, I need them, they need me. It's a great synergy. And we achieve happiness together because we share our war stories. We share our strength and our how we overcame some of these things. And that's my contribution today. And these people that show up every week are contributing to the group. So they feel that. And it literally is one of the best gifts that I've gotten. Every night, every weekend, every day, I can make a phone call and go do something with anybody.
Yeah.
That was never the case. And I was drinking. Well, I mean, a lot of times it was the case, but these people weren't interested in the relationships that I have today that are super deep. And the community that I have today is my family. They're the family that I choose. And they're so powerful in my life. I just would not trade it for anything. The relationships that I have today are the most important thing to me. And it's just so nice to have, you talk about unconditional love. And is it really something that can exist? Right. Like everybody has a way of making you upset and it's harder to maybe love them. But I tell you what, it's darn close. Like this community is so important to us. We get together every year at this. This year it'll be in February, the first weekend in February, where we do a Sober Society Cycling Summit. So it's a weekend filled with, a ride, speakers, sound healings, yoga, all this good stuff, right? And that weekend we look forward to every year, more than any other event that I have during the year. That is my favorite event. And it's super simple. Great people show up and we laugh, we love, we connect. It's amazing.
Yeah, that sounds very, very powerful. Shame I don't live closer, hey?
Yeah, hop on that plane.
Actually, I'm in a mastermind group with a lady that lives in Florida, and she's on my case to bring my
son. Where in Florida?
Come over and see her. Do you know, I knew you were going to ask me that, and the answer
is,
I don't freaking know. But not far from Disneyland, if that helps you any.
Yeah,
is diabolical, but
very cool.
There. So I'm hoping to get over to Florida at some point next year if I can. Like, it's on the vision board.
Get over here, Sabrina, and I'll put you up personally.
Amazing. So listen, Dane, I wanted to ask you, what are the things that keep you on track? Like, is it routine? Is it, speaking to somebody particular every single day? Like, give us your top 3. How to stay on track.
So what I do, what has served me thus far, is every day I have to find gratitude in my day. First thing when I wake up, I think about what I'm thankful for. And the gratitude helps me live in, abundance, live in love, gets rid of fear. I don't think I can be in gratitude and fear at like the same time.
Yes.
So that's huge for me. Giving back, being on podcasts, being on phone calls, talking to people when I don't want to talk to people is another contribution. Contribution is another huge one. Every day I have to contribute, whether that's, I must message half a dozen people every day. Just good morning, have a great day, something like that. And it's super selfish because it's for me. I've noticed that, I know that the byproduct is I give them smiles, make them feel loved and supported, but it's totally my medicine, is supporting and loving others. So that's a huge one. The other routine I have is I'm built where I need physical activity. So I'm always doing something, like oftentimes to the extreme, it may seem as if, but when I can have cardio for like an hour, especially in a group setting, it's huge for mental health. And my physiology is just in a much better spot. So something physical, sometimes it can just be a walk. But usually it's a little more fun than that. I'm on a bike or a unicycle or rollerblades or whatever. So it's, for me, it's physical activity is part of my routine, connection, phone calls, texting, whatever, messaging. is huge. And then that gratitude, you know, I'm no longer a Catholic or a Christian. But if you are, wonderful. Like, I appreciate everybody's deities and gods and visions and ideas. And, but my, so I used to be prayer. That's why I bring this up. It's meditation and yoga and things like that. But I think that if you have a connection with a higher power, that would be, you know, on my list. And my higher power is different and evolving. So people are kind of my higher power right now, and that's where I start. So
love
that. How about you, Sarah? What do you do?
So it's very much about connection for me as well. And I think that's probably a common thread, isn't it, amongst us peeps in recovery? Connection, it's just about really speaking to people and being curious and, you know, not necessarily others that are in the recovery community, just having conversations and connecting on a level that's a bit deeper than just like, hey, how you doing? You know what I mean? Like, I've really been taking a lot of time recently to do kind of getting to know you calls with people, and I've loved it. The gratitude thing, of course, is absolutely pivotal in my day. You know, sometimes I find myself in a place where I'm just like, oh my God, you know, what is going on? La, la, la. It's all going tits up, whatever it is that's happening. I've got a bill coming. My son's getting on my last nerve, you know, normal life stuff. Yeah. But as soon as I'm able to bring myself back to that place of gratitude, I find that I'm much more able to tackle it in a way that serves not just me, but those around me. And also journaling for me has been huge in recovery. I don't know if you ever journal, Dane, but my God, I've had some of the biggest breakthroughs from journaling. Like, I uncovered basically the root cause of my addiction through journaling by accident, right? Like, what had happened was I had a big bust up with my son. He was only 3 at the time. And I went away from it thinking, what the hell triggered me so much? That situation did not warrant that. And what I realized was that I perceived that he'd lied to me. Now, he was 3, yeah? Like, how's he lying? He's not lying. He's just being 3. But then I realized from my journaling, oh my God, it's because I was lied to my whole life by my dad. Like, he was a compulsive liar. And I say that with love. It's who he was. It was his culture. You know, I bear him no ill feeling about that. However, the impact of that was that I felt abandoned. You know, he would go away and he would say he was coming back and he wouldn't freaking come back. Like, it was lies. And as I was writing all this out, and I was like, you know, and he would buy me booze and fags and all of the things I thought was super cool when I was 13, to make up for abandoning me. And as soon as I wrote that word abandonment in my journal, I was like, holy cow, this is the reason for it all. Like, I've just been perpetuating that behavior by abandoning myself all of these years following, because that's what I learned how to do. And it was just like the biggest epiphany that came from having a completely unrelated bust up with my son, because I wanted to get curious with myself and go like, well, hey, what's really going on here? I know it's not. The argument we had as well, Dane, was because he hadn't wiped his bum, right? So from that point, like, of him not wiping his bum, I got to the bottom of my root cause of addiction, completely unprecedented. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm so blessed to be able to have this awareness, to have this, you know, willingness to dive in and find out what's really going on. And this is why I'm such an advocate for speaking to people the same way that you are, and for really getting to know yourself on a really deep level. You know, when you start to get really honest and really truthful, when you get naked with yourself, you know, and really be real about it. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it's just like, oh, I don't want to look at that. Like, you know, we've all got things that we don't like about ourselves, right? But those things are showing us something, right? And when we are able to dive into that and make it make sense and use it to our advantage, not in a manipulative way, but to incorporate it into our being and accept that we are not just perfect love and light all the time. You know, sometimes we are this darker character, and, you know, we say things that aren't nice and we do things that aren't great for ourselves or for others, whatever. You know, it's this journey of self-acceptance. So journaling has really, really helped me to get to that point.
That's a great point. And I want to say that I agree. And that is something that I left out, but it's very important. I think, you know, the gratitude list too, but journaling for me changed for so long early on in sobriety. When I would journal in treatment and so forth, I would write in such a way that in case somebody else read it, it was either cryptic or I left stuff out or I worded it a certain way. It became better for me when I wrote it as if it was only for me and no one else was going to ever see it. And I realized that I was writing things that I wasn't saying or necessarily thinking, but then I would write it and I was like, what? I didn't realize that. Right.
Exactly that. Exactly that. It helps you to connect the dots in a different way. I always say to people, like, in order to be able to get it out of your head and onto paper, you've got to get it in some sort of coherent order. Now, you may not have any conscious input into that. Like, as you just said, it sometimes just comes out and you're like, oh my God. Like, so many dots have been put together in a different way, making a far more beautiful picture than I ever could have imagined, on my own, just from being willing to just spend the time and do it. And, people sometimes say to me, like, oh, I don't know how to journal. I don't know what to write. And I always say to them, listen, just start where you're at. If what you want to say right now is, I feel fucking stupid for doing this, I don't even know what I'm going to write, and I've got nothing to say, the very act of starting and writing those words gets you moving, and if nothing comes, well, so what? It doesn't mean anything apart from what you make it mean. Just try again the next day, and there's so many different journaling prompts, different ways of journaling, isn't there? Some people do it through artwork and stuff like this. Like, it's just a whole world that it can change everything.
Agreed. And I think typing it too can be a good thing. If you're afraid of somebody's going to find your notebook or what have you, you can always type it and save it somewhere, where no one can see it. But yeah, that is a great suggestion. Journaling is muy importante, very important. And I think that that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, thank you for asking me. So, Dane, I would love for you to share with the listeners where they can find you. I will share your links and stuff a little bit later when I upload this to YouTube as well. But just for the purposes that it's been said in the podcast, please let people know, where they can find you, how they can get in touch and so on.
So my name, which is over.
Yeah, but they may be listening and not seeing it.
But if you're listening, you can call me at 1-800-410-6825. Our website is www.sobersociety.solutions. And those are great places to find us, or the Facebook group, Sober Society 365. Something came up. You had said journaling, and I wanted if I could, sorry to backstep here, but
don't.
As I digress, I think that when I journal too, I had to pay attention to some of the things so I would write it and then read it later, like in a different day, different context, different mood. And I was discovering that I wasn't happy. And for me, back to getting sober is one thing, but my sobriety has to be way bigger than my addiction was. So I have to make it super exciting or I get bored with it. Just like a lot of things in life, I like get bored and I move on to something else. So the only way I can keep this, as long as I've kept it, is making it exciting. But also like doing the work like you do and like so many do. I had to learn about, I was writing about stuff and there was just this huge void. Some people call it a God hole or something that you just can't seem to fill up inside. And I wasn't being loved the way I want to be loved, buying me gifts and stuff didn't really work. And I think it's important that people learn about their authentic selves. They might not even know what that looks like. And once you know what it looks like, you can grow and it can be so amazing. Like I didn't know that, physical touch and affirmations are more important to me than, acts of service and gift giving, things like that you can learn about that you really thrive when you're being fueled correctly. Right. So I felt like I didn't know that stuff. So when you journal, pay attention to what you're writing. And then I had to do something about it. So every time there was a problem, I had to find a solution, not just kind of live in the problem, because my identity for so long was the problems. That's where I found my significance in the drama, in the problems of life. And it wasn't until I switched and became a problem solver and tried to figure out how do I fix this hole, this void. So I just thought that was important.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you touched on something important there as well, which is that, it kind of catalogs your journey. Like, in a month's time, you might come back and go, oh, hang on a minute. Oh my gosh. This is what I thought. This is how I felt. I was so angry with the world. And now I'm like, that thing doesn't even touch me, or I've dealt with that, I've released it, whatever. And you don't necessarily notice this in the day to day because, hey, life happens, right? We're too busy to sit back and reflect. But when you've got it right there to refer to, it's like, oh my goodness, I forgot that happened. Oh my God, that was huge for me. Like that was a massive win. etc., etc. You know, it really serves a lot of purposes. And I think also creating actions from that. So this is something I do habitually. Is just like, you know, okay, what are my 3 actions that I'm going to take today as a result of that? I now that I know this, can I be a responsible human and act on this? And it might be, you know, make sure I go out and have a walk and clear my head and let off steam before I like lose my entire shit at my mum, or, you know, whatever it is. Doesn't necessarily have to be some great big groundbreaking earth-changing freaking thing. Like, it's just being accountable to myself. And I think that's important too. So, Dane, thank you so much for dragging yourself out of your lovely warm bed to join us here on Diary of a Cocaine Addict. It has been amazing, amazing, amazing to have you here. I feel like we need to have another 25 conversations. So don't be surprised if you get a message from me like, please come back on my show.
I love that.
Yeah, I'd love to have you. Maybe you and Sabrina could do a double whammy with me. That would be awesome.
That would be awesome. I definitely draw energy from her, and likewise.
Look at about 6 hours for that show. Right. Thank you so, so much. You are amazing. Guys,
thank you.
Always know that there is hope. There is hope. Where you are right now is not where you are. You know, you don't have to unpack and live there, right? We get to choose, and you can make the choice right now in this moment that you're never going to go back there, right? And there are people all around the world that are here to help you. Myself, Dane, you know, and 1,000 organizations. So make the decision today. Like, today you're important. Today is the day, right? Much love, one and all. I will be back next Friday with another show. Adios.
Thank you, Sarah.